All the objects we've created so far in this section have had pretty standard property values. We've added on things like strings, numbers, and booleans, but we can actually add functions as property values as well. We're going to explore exactly how we do that and some additional features given to us when we do. Over in the objects folder, let's make a new file for this one. I'm going to call this one objects-methods.js. We'll talk about exactly what a method is in just a second. Before we do, let's go ahead and create an object that we can add a function onto. Let's create a little restaurant seating tracker that keeps track of how many guests we currently have, so we can figure out if we can seat a party of a certain size when they walk in the door. So if 5 people walk in, I want to be able to quickly figure out if I have 5 seats available to them. So the thing that we're going to model with our object is going to be this restaurant. Let's make a new object called restaurant. Restaurant is going to be an object. And on here, we're going to add a few standard properties, values who are strings and numbers. Let's start off with the restaurant's name. You can pick any one you like. I'm going to use ASB, a restaurant near me. That stands for American Sardine Bar. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and add 2 others, specific to tracking the total number of seats available and the total number of seats being used. So the first one we can call something like guest capacity. Let's say that the guest capacity for this restaurant at any given time is 75 guests. We're also going to track the number of seats currently in use. We can use guest count for that. So if we just opened for the day, we would say that we have 0 guests sitting. So at this point, we have 75 available seats to us. Now, imagine we want to quickly create a function that takes in a number and figures out if we can seat a party of that size. So if I pass in 5, I would figure out if I can seat 5 people by taking the guest capacity, subtracting the guest count, and figuring out if that number is greater than or equal to 5. In this case, 75 minus 0 is greater than or equal to 5, so I would be able to seat a party of 5. Now, there are a few ways we could get that done. I could define a new function down below, much like we did over in the object references file. I could take in the restaurant and the number of people who are trying to be seated, and I could run the calculation and return true or false, depending on whether or not we had enough seats available. But what we're going to do is play around with methods. A method is nothing more than an object property whose value is a function. So if we want to create a new method right on here, we just add a new property on. We pick a name for it. I'm going to call this one check availability. Check availability is going to figure out if we can seat a party of a certain size. Now for the value, we're not going to use a string, boolean, or number. We're going to create a brand new function. So we use the function keyword. We add our arguments list, and we add our function body. And now we have our very first method created. Remember, a method is just an object property whose value is a function. In this case, the object property check availability does indeed have a value of a function. Let's go ahead and make this function actually do something. This one's just going to take in a single argument, the party size. So how many people are we trying to seat? And for the moment, we're not going to really calculate anything. We're just going to dump party size to the console to make sure the function actually runs. Console.log, passing in party size. Now the question has to be asked, how exactly do we call check availability? Well, you've actually already done it just with different methods and objects plenty of times before with console.log. Console is an object available to us by JavaScript. Log is a property who's a function, so you could call it a method, and it takes in the thing you want to dump to the console. So in our case, if I want to call check availability, I have to first get to that property, restaurant, dot check availability. Then I have to pass in, calling it as a function, the party size. Let's just say for now it's me and 3 friends, so the party size is 4. I want to figure out if I can seat 4 people. Let's go ahead and run the program and see what happens. I'm going to save the file, and from the terminal, run this one, node space. The file is objects-methods.js. When I run the script, what do I get? I get 4, and that's great. That means we were able to successfully call our method check availability with the argument 4, and the function actually did its thing. It went ahead and printed it to the screen. Now, the real check availability method isn't going to actually dump anything to the console. It's going to run a little calculation and return a Boolean. True if we can seat a party of that size, and false otherwise. So let's play around with this. I'm going to start by messing around with just the return value. I'm going to return true, and then we are going to access it and print it. So down below, let status equal whatever comes back from the check availability function call. Then down below that, console.log status, printing the status to the screen. This is going to allow us to figure out if we can seat that party. Now, right now, it's always going to be true, but I just want to make sure things are still working with the return value in place. So at this point, we can take an argument and we can return a value, and this is what we've been able to do so far. So what's interesting about putting a function on an object? What's interesting is that you get access to that object's properties right inside of the function. That means we can access name, guest capacity, and guest count from inside of this function, and that's going to allow us to do things like run our little calculation. To access the object properties, we use what's known as the this keyword. The this keyword is a source of a ton of confusion for new developers. It's a place where a lot of people get tripped up, so we're going to break it down into a way that's easy to understand. Inside of our methods, we have access to this. This references the object the method is defined on. In this case, we have our method right here. What object is it defined on? It's defined on this object. So this refers to the object. Now that means we should be able to console.log this to see the object with all of its properties. Right here, console.log this. I'm going to save the file and rerun things. And what do we see? We see an object with all of those properties: name, guest capacity, guest count, and check availability. That's it. That's all we have to worry about related to this at the moment. It's a way to access our object properties inside of a method. So we can access, for example, this dot guest capacity. And I actually spelt it wrong. It should be I-T-Y, not T-I-Y. Now we're accessing the individual property, and if I were to rerun things, I would expect 75 to print, and that is exactly what happens. So using this, we're going to be able to get the guest capacity and the guest count and actually figure out if we have enough seats available. Let's go ahead and do just that by creating a new variable right here. Let seats left equal, and then we're going to access those two properties, subtracting one from the other. So that is this dot guest capacity minus this dot guest count. In this case, the value would be 75, and we would be able to see that, yes, we can seat a party of 4. Now, how do we actually create the Boolean? Well, all we do, instead of having a static true, is use the comparison operator. We're going to check if the party size is less than or equal to the seats left. If it is less than or equal to the seats left, we can seat them. If it's not less than or equal to the seats left, we would be unable to seat them. Let's go ahead and save the file and see what happens. If I rerun the script, I would expect to get true, and I do. Now let's go ahead and change the guest count. Let's say we have 73 people already in the restaurant, so we only have 2 seats left. If I rerun things, what do I have this time around? I get false. So using methods, we're going to be able to add functionality right onto the object itself. We can get arguments, we can return values, and we can also use this to access properties off of the object the method is defined on. Let's go ahead and reset the guest count to 0, because instead of just changing it on the object, we're going to change it via method calls. So down below, there are 2 new methods we're going to be adding on to the object alongside of check availability. The first one would be something like seat party, which takes the party size to be seated and adds that on to guest count. The other one would be something along the lines of remove party, which would take the party size that's leaving the restaurant and it would remove it from guest count. Now, you're going to actually create these 2 methods as your challenge for the video. I'll go ahead and actually add the usage down below. So we could do something like restaurant dot seat party. I could seat, like, let's say 72 people. That would mean that I don't have room left for 4. Let's go ahead and simplify these 2 lines by just taking this method call, cutting it out, and dumping it right inside of the parentheses for console.log, removing the need to actually create a variable. So we try to seat a party of 72. That's going to work. We check the availability for 4. That's going to fail. Let's go ahead and remove some people. Restaurant dot remove party. Let's say we remove a party of 5, so then we would have 4 available. We can just take this line, copy it, and paste it down below. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to create the seat party and remove party method to make this code actually work. I should see false for this one, and I should see true for the one down below. Take as much time as you need to get this one done, create those 2 methods alongside of check availability, and then test your work. When you're done, we're going to go through the process together so you can come back and click play. Pause the video, and I'll see you in a second. All right, how'd that one go? To kick things off, I'm going to create the seat party method. So right inside of our object, after this property, comma, enter, the next property, seat party. It's going to be a function. Is this function going to take any arguments? Yes, it's going to take the party size that we're seating, party size. And all it's going to do is add this party size onto the guest count. That is this dot guest count. So we're going to set this dot guest count equal to the old guest count, this dot guest count, plus party size. Excellent. That's all we have to do for the seat party method. The other method you needed to create was remove party. So comma, enter, remove party. This one is also going to be a function that also takes as its one and only argument party size. This time, though, we're going to be subtracting the party size from the guest count. So this dot guest count is going to equal the current guest count, this dot guest count, minus the party size passed in. Whoops, accidental enter. Excellent. That's all you had to do to create those 2 methods. We can go ahead and remove the comments and actually test our work. I'm going to save the objects methods files, use clear to clear the terminal output and the up arrow key twice to rerun the objects methods file. When I do, what do I get? I get false for the first and true for the second, which is indeed correct. If I seat 72 people, I only have 3 seats left, which means I can't seat 4 people. If I remove 5, I have 67 seats left, which means I can then seat 4 guests. So there we have it. By using objects and methods, we're able to create a self-contained unit where we have the functionality, our methods, stored right alongside of the data that they work on. And this is something that we're going to see quite a bit, not only in code we create, but in various objects and methods that are provided to us by the language. Methods and objects come up a bunch in JavaScript. There are a lot of them that are available to us, built right into the language. And now that we know that methods exist, we can start exploring more than just console.log. We're going to continue on in the next section, the next video. So stay tuned and I'll see you soon.